I don't know if you got a chance to read the article from the wonderful and 94-year-old Thomas Sowell saying Republicans better get on the ball. They haven't made the case against Harris. The clock is ticking. When Thomas Sowell speaks, I listen, sir. And I know you do too. What is the latest on making the case against Harris from the Republicans?
Well, listen, Mike. First off, Thomas is the guy's brilliant, but have a little patience, Thomas. We haven't gotten to Labor Day yet. Once you get past Labor Day and people start to re-engage, that's when it's going to happen, Mike. And look, if you just look at the two campaigns, on the one side, all he can talk about is race, abortion, and I hate Trump, and you should too. And on the other side, it's about it's about the economy and inflation. It's about our southern border and crime, getting crime under control in our streets. And it's about restoring peace and stability across the globe. I think those two messages, and then the third thing I would add is Kamala's going to start speaking at some point. She's been completely scripted and given a free pass for the past several weeks, Mike. And as soon as she starts talking, that will be the beginning of the end. Donald Trump's going to win in November.
He said, Sowell, this is my last Sowell comment. He said, election officials in some states will begin mailing out ballots less than a month from now. So, if you make the case on November 3rd, there'll be a lot of votes already cast.
Right. I'm not suggesting that, obviously. I think the case has already been made. You've got a unique electorate that has seen these two movies already. They saw what the world looks like under Donald Trump. And they have seen what the world looks like under Harris and Biden for the last 3.5 years. I think that people are a lot smarter than the folks in Washington, D.C., the political partisans give them credit for. And, Mike, they're going to vote with their pocketbook. They're going to vote with safety and security. They're going to vote for peace and stability around the world. They're going to vote for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
We played a video of one of Kamala's ads where she has pictures of Donald Trump's wall in the ad, talking about how she's the tough on the border one. We had a guest earlier and hopefully you could provide some better insight to this because I want to make sure I articulate this well. But he said Kamala voted against the border wall when she was in the Senate. And then she took steps to oppose the way that Trump funded, because I get, what did he use money from, like the military budget or something? So she was against that. And now she is running ads showing that wall, acting as if it's her wall, and she's the tough on border person. What do we need to know about her legislative background here?
She's been totally anti-wall. From day one, it's not only her votes against it. You correctly point out that she didn't like the funding for it. She didn't like the wall itself. It was any excuse she could come up with to vote against something that Donald Trump had actually campaigned on and frankly had greatly succeeded on before the Biden-Harris administration took over. So Kamala Harris, all you got to do is look at the fact that she was made the border czar within the first few months of the Biden administration, and she never did a thing. So for her to call out now that she's the big border czar, she's the one that's in favor of securing the border, well, I got a bridge for you in Brooklyn if you believe that.
Yeah. You go to, if you want to know what the other side is freaking out about and how they're spinning things, you go to Drudge Report. I don't know what exactly happened with the Drudge Report years ago, but they're totally in the bag now. They have a poll with Harris up 7, and they're talking about Donald Trump backing out of the debate. What world are they living in?
Their own make-believe world, Mike. That's what these people do. They believe if they just control the narrative, regardless of whether it speaks the truth or not, that they're going to succeed somehow in convincing the American people that what they see, what they feel is not real. It's like these people who tell you all the time, Mike, they say, yeah, but inflation is coming down. Well, you go ahead and keep saying that, because I'll tell you what, the average middle-class family in this country that goes into the grocery store on a weekly basis and is paying $1,200 more a month for the same basket of goods that they were buying just 4 years ago, they know what's happened. You can't tell them something else, and I don't know where the Drudge Report has gone, but that's nuts. You've got the 7 swing states. I would include an 8th. I think Minnesota could well be in play. But you look at those states right now coming out of the DNC, everything is within the margin of error. There are 2 or 3 of them that were +4 for her, and there's 2 or 3 of them that have Trump up. So I don't know what world they're living in. The only poll that matters, as you know, is the one that will start, like you pointed out, in the next 3 weeks. Minnesota, I think, starts early voting on September 20th, and it'll culminate on November 5th if people are applying the laws correctly.
Speaking of the swing states, we spoke an hour ago about Arizona and what the Supreme Court ruled on their voting laws. And the end of the story is that the state can't mandate that people prove they're citizens in order to register to vote by mail in Arizona. How concerned are you about the efforts that the state of Arizona took to tighten election security, but the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that?
I think it's about time that these states recognize that the 10th Amendment is still in the Constitution, and they should be enforcing the laws for their citizens as opposed to letting the Supreme Court. I guess that is their Supreme Court. And it's insanity, Mike, if you think about it. Do you know that in Congress we passed a bill out of the House before we left in July called the SAVE Act? The SAVE Act is very simple. It's something that was authored by our friend Chip Roy out of Texas, and it simply said only U.S. citizens should be allowed can be allowed to vote in U.S. elections. And do you realize that we had a whole bunch of House Democrats vote against it? Look, these guys, they're against photo ID to prove that you are a person that is a voter. And they're against it, even though in order to get into the DNC last week, I understand you had to have a photo ID. It's insane, Mike.
Let's talk about your governor, Tim Walz, for a moment. So a couple other weird lies, like Tim Walz is an interesting type of liar, where he lies about things that he doesn't need to lie about. Like we talked to one of the guys who was in the National Guard with him, and one of my questions was he says he was a command sergeant major, but like sergeant major's still pretty awesome. Like just say you're a sergeant, or like why do you have to make up the one step higher for no reason? And now we have 2 other lies where he made it seem as if he went to Harvard or like was chosen for some Harvard University thing, but it wasn't. Like the guy who started it went to Harvard, but like he made it kind of like. And then the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce had to tell Tim Walz, this is back in 2006 during his congressional campaign, to knock it off, saying that you received an award from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. They're like, we never gave you an award. So it's like weird little lies that aren't necessary. What is up with that?
Well, the stolen valor one, I would argue, is not a little lie. The other ones, I agree with you.
No, that's a big one.
He's shading the truth, but that stolen valor one's been out there since 2008. Nobody in Minnesota had the courage to publish it. This guy, look, the Harris administration, this should be front page news, has already acknowledged that Tim Walz lied about his military record. They have already acknowledged that Tim Walz lied about his DUI arrest back in the early 2000s, where he tried to get out of the arrest by saying he was hard of hearing, he didn't understand what was going on. Ultimately, they have already acknowledged that this guy is a pathological liar. And that doesn't seem to be making headline news in our mainstream news media, which maybe they're a little bit like the Drudge Report. They want to ignore the truth. This guy is a pathological liar. He's not popular in Minnesota. People don't understand in the last election that he just barely won with 52% of the vote. We have 87 counties, Mike. Tim Walz only won 13 of those counties. And in the other 74, he got 37% of the vote. In fact, in his old congressional district, Mike, he lost it by 8 points. This guy himself might put Minnesota in play for Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah, it's supposed to, usually goes the opposite. Usually it wins the state. It may lose the state. Last question for you, Tom Emmer, House Majority Whip. There are a couple policy proposals that Kamala's thrown out there. I just want to throw you 3 of them, and you can decide which one's the worst. Price control on groceries, 45% capital gains tax, and a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains. And then the $25,000 for first-time home buyers and a more generous gift for first-generation home buyers. We spoke about the illegal immigrantness of that with a bill in California specifically for illegal aliens, first-generation home buyers. Which of those three stand out to you as the most insane?
They are all insane. And I look, price controls on food. Why don't we open up the economy? Taxing, I think the phrase, and maybe this one is the worst, unrealized gains, Mike. That's something that you haven't earned yet. In other words, they're taxing you on what might be in the future. She's clearly not competent, not ready for this job. She doesn't know a damn thing about economic growth. She doesn't know anything about securing our southern border. She has no interest in solving the crime problem that is plaguing our cities across this country, and she doesn't have a clue on foreign policy. In fact, it'd be interesting to see her try to tell us the geography around the world. I think she'd have trouble doing that. So, look, she's not.
What's your advice?
What's that?
What's your advice to Trump? What's your advice to Trump for his debate coming up on September 10th?
Let her be who she is. Do exactly what you did with Joe Biden. Just make your points. It's about the economy. It's about inflation. They caused it. Make your points about the border, about the crime situation that wasn't existent when Donald Trump was president, and make your case about peace and security around the world. And then just let her talk. Let her talk. The American public, once they listen to the unplugged version of Kamala Harris, this will be a short trip to November 5th for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
Is there a website you'd like to forward people to?
Look, go to Emmer. No, you can look me up, TomEmmer.com. No, I don't have anything I want to offer on that.
Yeah, that's a great end. Like, no, I don't know. Go to the RNC.
Just go to the internet.
Yeah, Breitbart.com is great too. Congressman Tom Emmer, he represents the 6th district in Minnesota, but he's the House Majority Whip, most notably. Tom, great to talk to you, sir.
Great talking to you, Mike. Have a great week.